We good?
Alright, all set.
All set, all right. So being 7 o'clock, we're gonna call the meeting to order. This is the Tuesday, April 8th, 2025 Hopkinton Conservation Commission meeting. We're meeting today in person, Hopkinton Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street. So before we get started, I'm just gonna go through, we have actually quite a few things that are crossed off of our agenda. So 17 Ledgestone Drive and 4 Linden Street. Both of those applicants have requested to continue to the April 29th, 2025 meeting, so we're not going to be discussing them tonight if you're here for that. Also, 47 Oakhurst Road, notice of intent, that also requested a continuance to April 29th, 2025. So we will not be talking about that tonight either. First up on our work session items, we have Holmes 37 Oakhurst Road, an enforcement order that Judy drafted up at our request at our last meeting. So hopefully everyone has had a chance to take a look at it. Judy, did you want to highlight anything in the enforcement order?
Sure. Through the chair, the commission at their last meeting had requested the homeowner provide us with a list of items needed to temporarily stabilize the site. I received a abbreviated list that didn't contain sufficient detail to justify what items were needed. This afternoon, he did follow up with a little bit more detail, so what you have in front of you is what I determined to be necessary to temporarily stabilize the site. So the only allowable actions before achieving the correct permitting being seeding and loaming the side yard, which is still pretty torn up, maintaining erosion controls, and preparing a site plan to receive permitting guidance from the commission by the next meeting. The homeowner did reply this afternoon that he would also request the commission allow him to fortify the retaining wall with natural stone and mortar to strengthen the concrete blocks that are currently there, as well as fortify the corner where the tarred blocks were removed with boulders to try to stabilize that site. Not a ton of additional information besides those two items, so if the commission would like me to modify the enforcement order to include that, or any other information, can discuss or vote to issue as is.
Okay. So he wants to fortify what's already built, stabilize it more, not expand the footprint or anything like that.
Yep, that's correct.
Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on that? I did ask, in speaking with Judy this afternoon, adding the sentence, failure to comply with these actions may result in fines, to give a little more teeth and incentive to the homeowner to get back to us with plans. So if no action's taken or we don't receive plans by the 22nd, we can enforce some fines.
The Chair, I have a question. Judy, I wonder if maybe you can help. I haven't seen the retaining wall. I know when we met 2 weeks ago, the owner of 37 Oakhurst said, I'm going to put it in air quotes, I'm not directly quoting, that the lake water would be rising quickly. So he very much wants to solidify the wall. And yet when Carrie Reed talked to us, she said, it takes a while for the lake to rise. Are we worried that the water is going to hit this wall?
So when we were out there, we haven't been out for, I want to say 2 weeks. We've been asking for permission each time we went out. The permission hasn't been revoked, but we haven't necessarily needed to go back out there. The water, I would say, was still 10 feet off of the wall, but we do know that it's been rising. I haven't heard from him that it has hit the wall at this time. So I think it could easily happen before the permits are achieved. I mean, because that'll take getting the site plan and having Joe go out and review it. So I think that by the time he gets a permit, it's very likely that the water will be up.
It's a frustrating circumstance because it's work clearly in our jurisdiction that he hasn't presented plans for, that we don't have anything to tell us what he's doing or how he's doing it. But we also don't want more stuff crumbling into the lake. I don't know that I've made up on my mind on whether we give him that permission or not. I could see arguments both ways.
So this is from March 21st. So the wall here, and the water hadn't been touching the wattle, but it was just about at the wattle.
That's March 21st.
Yep.
I don't know. It seems bad form to give a permission without a plan. It also seems bad form to have more crumbling into the lake, so.
Yeah, maybe we can word it very specifically that it's just to stabilize what's in place right now and not, there can be no expansion of footprint or excavation or anything along those lines. I mean, they're talking just strictly to stabilize the wall where it is so that, it doesn't, it's not in jeopardy of falling into the water, into the lake.
I don't mean to have an opinion for all of us. Do you all have thoughts? You're laughing at me.
No, I'm not laughing at you.
I like what you said. I think that walks the line between protecting the lake, but also not establishing a precedent that you can just go do your own building projects and hamstring us and force us to say yes.
Somehow facilitating the process.
Mhm.
Yep. Does that make sense, Judy? Can you draft that into a sentence?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And would you like that to come back to the commission before issuing, or?
I think I'd be fine with issuing it. Everything else looks good to me. I'm glad we have we have dates in here. And we're letting them know that if they're not complied with, we'll take further action through fines. And I think that's appropriate for the next meeting for the timeline, so yeah, I'm good with it. So can I get a motion for Judy to issue this enforcement order with the additional sentence as proposed?
Do we need to then, even though we're here, allow signatures because we're not signing that one?
Yeah, I think we do.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second, this is Ed.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 You just call our names just because we're used to that?
Just this is the one night I get off from calling names. I'm gonna take it.
But that felt so weird.
All right, next up we have the draft minutes for review from June 25th, 2024. Did everyone get to take a look at those? Do we have enough who are present from that meeting?
This is when Jeff was still with us. That's
What
nice.
was?
These minutes.
Oh, you're right. Got my memory.
I move to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. And next up, we have Town of Hopkinton, Hayden Road, Charles Woods School, informal discussion on project changes. Welcome.
Aye.
Evening. Hi.
Another evening spent together.
Yep, in person this time. So So what's going on?
Oh, well, I wish we were before you guys under better circumstances, but,
It's a hell of a way to lead.
yeah, right?
I would have started differently.
Are you talking on a town basis, a national basis, or a worldwide basis?
Well, we don't have all night, so. We submitted some information to the commission last Friday, giving a summary of sort of the events that have occurred in the last couple of weeks. But just to give you a brief summary, about 2.5 weeks ago or so, Judy and Anna reached out to our team to inform us that they were informed of the discovery of a intermittent ditch on the property located just north of 147 Hayden Row Street, which is the parcel that the proposed secondary entrance to Charleswood is going to be constructed on. And that ditch flows in a south direction in the northern, in the parcel to the north of us, and enters a 12-inch concrete pipe beneath our site. What you see before you here is a 2010 plan that Anna and Judy were able to dig up out of the archives and share with us. So once they informed me of that, I reached out to Joe, and he kindly made time in his schedule to meet me out at the site a few days afterwards, and we investigated the ditch to the extent that we could on the 147 Hayden Row Street parcel. We also traversed onto the site to the north, up to, there's a C-series bordering vegetated wetland on site, and we wanted to confirm if that wetland had any connection to the intermittent ditch. We didn't find any surficial connection that would make it a jurisdictional intermittent stream with bank under the Wetlands Protection Act regulations, but per the bylaw regulations, it is jurisdictional nonetheless. If it's not flowing out of a bordering vegetated wetland or resource area, it's still protectable under your bylaw regulations. So with that being said, I hung some bank flags on site, and Joe was with me for that. And BSC Group, the surveyors, subsequently located those flags. And Judy, do you have the Samiotis plan that I gave you? Oh, perfect. So the bank flags are shown there. The surveyor also located the 12-inch CMP that's shown in magenta. And they placed the 50-foot, 75-foot, and 100-foot buffer zones, green, blue, and tan, I guess, on the plan there. So as you can see, the entrance is now within buffer zone, which during the NOI review process and through issuance of the ordering of conditions, it was previously not identified. The surveyor also located the intermittent ditch on the northern property because it does make a turn, so that projects a little additional buffer zone that we wouldn't have otherwise identified. So that's sort of the conclusion of what we found and what we placed on the plans. Samiotis updated this plan sheet to note that the contractor, when selected and before they begin work, should survey confirm the invert, the top of the culvert elevations, and any information to gather on site to confirm that they can protect it during construction. They'll replace the culvert before installing the road in kind. So you see there's sort of a circle just south of the entrance there. That's another manhole. So they'll replace the culvert where it's located on site. And at the inlet in the northern portion of the site, currently it's just not in great shape. There's a metal grate that's above the inlet and a tree throw and just some dense vegetation growing around it. So they'll replace the metal grate with a catch basin as well during construction. So we just wanted to bring this to your attention as a sort of new discovery before getting into construction. Anna and Judy have been really great to work with, and Joe, I really appreciate all of your time. But we would like to request if the commission would be amenable to us continuing to work through this administratively, perhaps getting through construction with this feature and depicting any of the replacement work as, in the as-built plans when it comes to certificate of compliance.
There's also, you'll see, I don't know if it's on this, I think we have the separate plan that we sent.
Oh, the planting plan, yes. There's,
So the project has been finalizing the butter mitigations, and those butter mitigations were outside of the setbacks that were required from the original ANRAD that was done. But with the discovery of the intermittent ditch, that throws those mitigations right in the middle of that, with that intermittent stream. So we have, you can see there's a fence on the 145 property and also a fence proposed on the 149 property. And those now fall within those setback areas. There's also a small driveway extension that will likely be part of town meeting next year for 145 because of how deeply we're cutting the road into the front of their driveway in the right-of-way work. And so that was, it's less impervious area than the house and the shed that are currently there. After those are demo, it would be a place for them to be able to turn their car around because they lose about 2/3 of the driveway in front of their house. But those now all fall within that same setback. So as part of the question before you is whether we can handle those administratively as well. I believe the plan is to hold the fences 6 inches off the ground and to interrupt the fence where it crosses the intermittent ditch so that it's compliant with the bylaw. That work is not technically on 147, but on the neighbor's property, so it wasn't necessarily Concom-related work, and we've been spending much of the last 2 months working with the abutters to make sure they're satisfied with the mitigations that we're introducing for their properties.
What type of a fence is it? Is it like a screening fence? Is that what?
It's
they're-
largely screening fences. I know 149 wanted it to be vinyl. Part of the challenge of all this is that 145 recently changed ownership. And so it was about the same time that we did our soil sampling for the purposes of characterizing the site in anticipation of the building project. And so when we did that, they called DigSafe, and DigSafe was able to do what we weren't, which was identify that there was a pipe buried there. And about the same time, I reached out to Claire and said, hey, there's a pipe that goes to a flowing body of water. Where did that come from? So we have a few theories about why this wasn't caught the first time around. I know it was a lot drier when we did the ANRAD. But the hope would be that we could also handle those modifications administratively. If we can't, then we'll spend another evening together.
I also turned it to you, Joe, and see if you had any thoughts or comments from being out there and.
Well, I think, as it was described, by Claire, was exactly what we saw. The stream would be jurisdictional, I agree, under the bylaw. We can't confirm whether or not it's flowing out of or through a UW at this point without access to the adjacent properties, but it certainly would be protected under the bylaw. With respect to the additional bylaw cast onto the property, there's no work that I see actually within the resource area. I think it's just additional bylaw. So with that, I don't know that it's would be required that there would be a amendment to the notice required. I think it's just looking at some additional buffer zone work that the commission can discuss, whether it's appropriate to handle that administratively.
Because it's just under the bylaw, and it's only in buffer,
Correct.
that's potentially
I would
why we
I would recommend no finding on whether or not it's protected under the WPA. the Waters Protection Act, because we don't have access right now to the adjacent property. And from what we saw, we couldn't find a direct connection from the upgrading wetland to that stream. But certainly it's under jurisdiction.
All right, Judy, did you have any additional thoughts or information?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Claire, if you were planning on getting updated disturbance numbers, like how much more buffer zone this is adding, or if you had been able to
Yes.
put that together?
Yes, I actually got that information from Sam Yodes a couple hours ago today, so I have a lovely colored sheet that I can hand off to you, and you can take a look, but ultimately, under the issued order of conditions, total work within the 100-foot buffer zone was reported for temporary impacts, 16,074 square feet, and permanent impacts, 8,397 square feet. And with this additional buffer zone, total 100-foot impacts, temporary is 23,584, and permanent is 15,147. And I have that all broken up between 50, 75, and 100 foot if you want those numbers to update your records.
And I believe there was also changes to the planting plan, so
Oh, yes,
Rita,
thank you for
talk to
pointing
that.
that out. Traverse was sure to update the plans, so any of the proposed landscape plantings within the buffer zone are all native and no cultivars proposed.
All right, I'll open up to the board if anyone has questions on this. I don't have any concerns, I don't think, about what's going on here. My biggest question in my head is how we administratively handle it, to keep things clean and organized and, yeah, I don't know,
Consistent.
consistent.
Yeah.
Melissa, I have a question,
Yes.
an easy one. Is what you're calling a ditch, is that what's known as Beaver Brook, or the sort of head of Beaver Brook,
I think so.
or, yeah?
Yeah, it's sort of mixed, depending on what maps you look at, whether it's shown and labeled as Beaver Brook, or if there's just a little line work, or,
So,
Not
okay, so it
labeled at
runs
all.
across, north-south, right?
yes.
It appears that at some point, the neighbors or a developer at some point buried a pipe through all of the homes that are north of 145, and for some reason at 145 decided to keep it above ground, and then from 147 south, it goes back underground. There's a structure that's visible on 149 that we saw when we were discussing mitigations with that owner.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, it caught me by surprise when I saw the white flag and I walked over to see what it was, and I'm like, where'd this come from?
It does daylight again just south of the brewery.
Which is at what address?
I think it was 151.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because there's a pond behind 151, right?
But it doesn't daylight into that pond at all.
okay.
No, it does not.
All right, thanks. I think it goes that far now.
Through the chair, this is Ed.
Yes, Ed.
We're all here.
Yeah.
It's a habit.
Yeah,
You're on video too, by the way.
yeah, I know. So I just find this incredibly troubling, and that if this were someone wanting to build houses in Hopkinton who came in with plans and got them sort of approved, and then came along later and said, oh, by the way, I mean, I don't see this as just a little thing. I mean, I see this as a big boo-boo,
When we
and I will
bought the
leave it at that
property,
for the
or
moment.
when we bought the property, or in planning? Both? 47.
Well, I think, like you said, I think, you know, things pop up, things happen. I'm glad we found it now versus in construction, because that could be, probably alternatively what would happen. So I appreciate the fact that, you know, there's a chance here to plan for it and, you know, come up with change the plantings and, as opposed to an after the fact, because we see those two come in after things are constructed and then we look at what was constructed and it's not what was approved. But I do see some value in amending the notice of intent at this point in time, just because it memorializes some things here. We don't forget about it, you know, going forward, and so that things are, you know, constructed as proposed, the plants go in as they're proposed here on the revised plan, and we're not chasing this down and as-built later, documentation-wise.
It's also in keeping with what we've asked other applicants to do, if something like this comes up and we have this much work in
Yeah,
a protected zone.
so I think my gut would be to
Amended
to go
NOI.
ahead and amend it. I don't have an issue with, you know, what's proposed at all, or making that a difficult process at all.
I'm in agreement.
I agree too, Melissa. Thank you. If I may ask, if we were to go with the amended order of conditions, are there any other items the commission members could provide to us now to consider if, you know, the project's already been out to bid, so this is a very time-sensitive
Yeah,
matter, so we would really like to do everything we can to just open and close this at the next meeting. So if we could get any early feedback from the commission tonight, that would be extremely helpful. Unless we did everything perfectly.
Nobody ever does.
May I ask a question?
go for it. Yeah.
So could you just help me with part of what you guys shared? Some of the mitigation plantings are now, and correct me if I'm wrong, I could easily be wrong. Some of the original plan mitigation plantings are now problematic for the work that needs to be done where it's being done, given what's underneath? Or can all the previous mitigation plantings stay exactly where they were?
I believe some had to shift where you sort of
was my
see that
question then.
split between sort of the thicker
was-
black line work and, yeah, I think those had to
Um,
split for the
some-
culvert.
When you say previous, do you mean the
Whatever we
currently
approved
versus
initially.
where we are now?
Right.
So, two things changed. One is we had further discussions with 149, and they objected to the way that we had presented the fence. They
Okay,
wanted something that would provide more screening.
okay,
They also want, when the fence moved, it changed the relationship of everything together.
okay.
So in order to provide them with screening, we provided a little more screening plants and took the fence to their property line.
Is there any chance you could walk up there and point with
Sure.
your finger?
I would love to, because I hurt my shoulder. So, this fence here.
Yep.
The final location, we told the owner that we would work out once we stake the property line, because we are providing a fence on their property that they're gonna live with and maintain.
Okay,
It originally was a fence that was that was like a like a split rail
Split
fence
rail.
along the sidewalk, and the plantings supported that. With the move back there, we reconsidered the plantings because now they're going to provide more screening high over the fence.
Okay.
So there's more trees, more shade trees, in that area. Because this property was for sale at the time, we did
The
not-
northern property.
The northern property. We did not hear from that owner until, this is not an exaggeration, I think 3.5 weeks ago.
Okay.
And so at that point, that was when I went out there, saw the stream, had access to their property. They are looking for mitigations that deal with the fact that this is now a 1,200 student driveway. And so particularly for this homeowner, they'll now be getting headlights shined on the back of their house. For this homeowner, they're going to have
They're gonna lose that
same
driveway.
traffic, and their property line, the property line could be inches off the driveway that they have now, so it's very close to that.
Yeah.
So we wanted to provide, particularly in the back, additional shade trees.
Okay.
That would be like, I think they're cedars or firs, I don't
Okay.
remember.
Red cedars.
That would be large and encompass the, sort of block the area. We also were hoping, they currently have an existing fence that goes from the stream to the corner of the garage that is falling down. We wanted to provide more of a screening fence, and we were hoping to extend it to the south of the stream. In our discussions with them, and because it was the same day that we discovered the intermittent stream, if that's not permitted by the commission, we'll go back to that homeowner and say, this is a buffer zone, we can replace in kind, but we can't create new, and I think they'll be amenable to that. In all honesty, the biggest concern I have is that the town of Hopkinton's about to enter into a $120 million contract, and if I'm gonna hand someone a new order of conditions after that contract, it's gonna cost the town a heck of a lot of money, just because of public bidding laws. So we're eager to resolve this for that reason. And if we have to modify this to satisfy the commission and get our amended order of conditions, then we'll modify it to satisfy the commission.
Okay.
We'll have the conversation, because the conversation will be the same with the neighbors, whether they were before you or the town is
Right.
before you.
Okay, thank you. That clears that part of it up for me. Thank you.
Melissa, I have another question.
Sure.
So I was looking at an aerial here. The ditch, I think I see where the ditch starts, and then it's underground, right? All the way to the point where it daylights, you were saying like around 151 or something like that, right? So it's possible that it was only put in to de-water kind of the 149, 150, or whatever it is, going north, right? I mean, it looks like it would have just been to de-water that.
I think it was
So what
actually
you-
flowing south when I was there.
It flows south, and yeah, it's sort of,
But it starts with a ditch, and it's
it's,
piped.
it seems that way. It seems like it might be piped
It
under a
starts-
couple of the
It
properties.
appears to start with a pipe that's under 143.
43.
Further north, yeah.
I think if you go back to the previous image,
Yeah, 143, right. I see that.
it actually leaves a pipe there. And I don't think that, this time of year, everything is water back there. But it appears to gather and go north, and we've heard stories in the past from the previous marathon that there was a pipe there, but it didn't show up on any plans. And so it basically snakes under, I have a more close-up picture on my phone if that would be helpful to the commission, but it basically snakes across their property. It can't be more than 5 feet onto 147's property, and then it's basically a big pile of bushes and the water disappears.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it looks like in here. And 143. All right, thanks.
For context, I'll just.
Okay. Jim, do you want to take a look at
That's,
That's
on the
looking
northerly
from
boundary of,
145 towards 147.
so, and that's the northerly line of
That's
145.
looking from north to south.
But the edge of, this is the southern edge of 145 or
This
147?
is the line between 145 and 147. I'm standing on 145's property,
Oh, okay.
looking
You're looking at
the
147. You're looking at 147 there, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's just the way it shows up on there. Yep.
That's a good-looking fence. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that when we clear the brush on 147, that fence is going to fall down on its own.
The brush is holding it up.
Yeah.
I'm surprised the wind hasn't taken it down.
I think because the brush is holding it up.
Is this the job for the fence viewer?
Ah, that's
No,
it, by
no,
the
I'm
way.
the fence viewer.
You need any decisions on fences?
Melissa, I'd reiterate, I think I'm comfortable with everything, but I do think administratively we need to do an amended NOI. And I can't see myself having any hiccup
Yeah.
with voting for it once we get it.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, everything, I mean, it looks like essentially you're replacing in kind the condition, so from a stormwater perspective, there's no additional water going in that pipe, it's all just,
The
Maintaining what's
DPW commented that they would prefer if we're putting a road over it, that it's a new pipe we're putting a road over and
Yeah.
not whatever condition the old pipe's in.
Yeah, it's probably not rated for a road.
no, that makes sense. Okay,
May I just ask one more thing related to the screen plantings and the fencing on the abutting properties? Those parcels were not included in the order of conditions, so with the amendment request, we would not necessarily be including those features because it would pull properties into a permit that were not a part of the permit initially. But those activities, fencing, if it has the 6 inches of gap from the ground, and plantings, as long as they're native, are technically an exempt minor activity under the Wetlands Protection Act. Under the bylaw regulations, it's also an exempt activity, but I saw some text that it had to be 50 feet away from a resource area. Is there any allowance from the commission to sort of perhaps include those in the revised plans for the amended order of condition and note that those off-site features are considered a minor activity, not part of this order of conditions? Just want to understand how best to
Right.
procedurally handle that as well.
I think that makes sense. I can't think of any example situation that we've done or not done that before.
Through the chair.
Yes,
I think for something like that, it would be something that Judy and I would ask the commission to approve versus Judy and I approving. So typically, if it doesn't meet exactly how the bylaw states, we usually ask the commission to administratively approve it. Some really, with like the trail bridges, stuff like that, that it's a minor activity if the commission feels comfortable. And then we can write an exemption letter with their vote.
you would write that for each of those property, that would go in the property file for those
We could
properties.
document it with this order, but then have a property, like a letter for each specific property to document it if it was questioned down the road why those particular ones have those fences.
Yeah,
But
okay.
like you said, not tie it to the order for the school and have that title issue.
I think that makes sense. Good,
They're good, I'm good.
All right.
all right. So,
And the next meeting is April 30th,
29th,
29th?
yeah.
Okay.
We'll be there.
Virtually.
All right,
Yes.
Virtual, yeah, virtual.
All right, thank you all for your time.
Can I just ask one more question? Assuming that you all agree, as you did tonight, and that it passes, how soon after would the order of conditions be issued?
Within 21 days, but we can be quick if you'd like.
Okay.
Through the chair, may I point out that we didn't all agree?
Happy to accept
Provided
that
we all
correction.
Yeah,
Supervisor, since
And I'll just ask if there's anyone from the audience that had any comments on this. No? Okay. We're good.
All right. Thanks for your input. Appreciate it.
Everyone.
All right. I'm gonna jump up to our continued hearing, which is Ravenwood LLC, abbreviated notice of resource.
Chair, do we want to read the hearing notices for the new?
Oh, do we need to, okay.
Oh, yeah, we could do them after.
Do them after. We'll just put it at the end.
Yes.
Don't let me forget.
Just don't.
Chuck? Nope.
No.
What are we on?
Downloaded out of my phone.
Oh, we're amazing.
We want to wait for Mr.
Okay. Yeah,
I guess in the meantime, so I have, I brought 4 copies of the plans, Judy. I only need 3, but I figured an extra set might be good just for people who are further away to look at.
Why I came
Glorious
here.
this is. Do you have
And
any
I
idea?
love
These plans
paper.
here,
Not
but-
looking at a little
And,
monitor like this?
Could you bring some fresh ones next time?
Yeah, on top of that,
No,
You smell the ink.
I smell them. Is this staying here?
most of these, this is just a, this is the second and third pages of this are, will be discussed as well, just, so. Just want to wait for Mr.
Yeah, I think he's coming in right now.
Thank you.
All right.
So, my name is Mark Arnold with Goddard Consulting. We're here on behalf of Ravenhood LLC for DEP 188-1841. This is an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for parcels off of Wood Street and near Valley Road. In terms of their locus, they're not actually abutting a road directly except 495 in terms of the site locus itself. So, just reviewing where we were, so we filed an INRAD. Joe was able to get out to the site, identify some flagging changes, which we were able to meet him on site and review and make those changes and get those surveyed. The major delay to these plans was getting detailed topography, which was part of clarifying the 2 large isolated wetlands on the property, which could have potentially been ILSF, or Isolated Land Subject to Flooding, which is a jurisdictional area under the Wetlands Protection Act. So, so just to quickly review, and I'm going to kind of start from the top down. This is the southern portion of the site, and this line here is the parcel that connects to the Whisper Way subdivision area here. So the wetland line for this ANRAD started here on the property line, comes down through here, and then comes all the way down here to the rear of the parcels off of Valleywood Drive. Joe was able to identify an IVW that just sneaks across the property line right here and kind of comes back down into here. So that was delineated. We gave the head of that wetland and it fingers off down here as well. And then we have 2 isolated wetlands here and here on the parcel. We have a large hillside up here with no other wetlands or features there. And then this is 495 right down through here. So the areas that we wanted to review detail, and this again why the plan took a little longer, was because these areas are depressions of large extent which need to be evaluated for ISO land subject to flooding. So we provided an exhibit plan with the plan set there, basically just to help the commission zoom in on the area and also understand the area. So isolated land subject to flooding is an area of extent that can hold a 1/4 acre foot of volume, which is 10,890 cubic feet of water itself. The T-series wetland is a large depressional area. It's very large in terms of its extent. We had detailed topo done at the lower end of at this overflow point in the valley to determine where the spillover would be, to determine where exactly the ponding would occur. And once we determine that the ponding, if this valley flooded, it would flood up to elevation 402 right here. It's over 10,880 cubic feet of volume. So this area does contain an area of isolated land subject to flooding, which we've noted in the plan, and the extent is elevation 402. Again, isolated land subject to flooding is based on a contour and elevation and volume. It's not based on field conditions. It's based on the actual contours and the lay of the land. So, so you'll be able to see that in on this plan. You can see that there's many spot elevations, but basically once you get to elevation 402, the elevation drops down again. So you go down to 401, 400, and then you have a slope down to here. So again, isolated land subject to flooding says if you have a depressional area, does it contain more than 10,890 cubic feet? If it does, you calculate the extent of flooding up to where it actually can no longer flood to. In terms of basically, it's an isolated floodplain that it filled perfectly with water. Where can it no longer rise to? And at elevation 402, that's where the water would end up spilling up and coming down here, if it ever did. There's no evidence that it does that. Again, it's a very small watershed in terms of the water that actually collects here, but it is an area that the way the state regulates areas that are isolated is isolated land subject to flooding at elevation 402. So that area we call as elevation 402. We called it to the extent of the wetland line, and then once we had detailed topo, we followed the elevation down through here. And I know Joe remember walking this line. This is a very distinct slope all the way down through here. Down here is where it gets very low in the valley, and where we had we made that wetland line correction and hooked it back to make sure we had the extent of the wetlands on the property there. So the plans show out that extent, and then the back side here, this is off property. We just showed it just show that it is kind of all connected together, and that's why we kind of use this aerial LiDAR topo just to kind of help the commission understand there is isolated land subject to flooding back here, but it's off property. So again, the extent of the isolated land subject to flooding is in this area here, and then basically up to the wetland line, which is basically a conservative line along here. The other area, which is the S-series wetland, is another larger depressional area as well. You can see it's similar in size to this wetland here. However, the topography is a lot more confined within the center of the wetland itself. And so we showed here elevation 385.15. And you notice that the elevation starts here, it comes in through the wetland, and then it comes back out. So basically, the water can't flood above this elevation in terms of flooding. So when you run the calculations, calculating each of these depressional areas, and then also the area up to elevation 385.15, you end up with 8,329 and 0.7 cubic feet of volume, which is about 2,000 cubic feet under what's required to qualify as isolated land subject to flooding. So this area is still isolated vegetated wetlands up to the delineation as reviewed by Lucas, but the area is not isolated land subject to flooding based on the volume in the area. We did run the calculations because we looked at it, we said it's close enough to run it, and it's 2,000 cubic feet short of actually containing enough volume to actually become ILSF under the Wetlands Protection Act. So we know this information was just provided to you, and Lucas may need time to review it, but we wanted to make sure that we were able to present this information because this is a unique situation. You probably don't see a lot of ILSF calculations all the time, particularly when there's a question of is it or not. So we wanted to make sure we presented that to you, and if there were any questions, we could clarify that now or get you more information before the next hearing. So that way, at the next hearing, hopefully we could get this approved.
Okay. It's a lot of number crunching.
Yeah, that part of it was getting the topo right, and then having the servers add additional topo layers like this contour, so we could actually crunch the numbers itself. So, yep. But it's a geometric, basically, volume calculation, fairly basic for those that have at least an engineering background. I have a bachelor's of civil engineering, so it helps running the calculations to have some background in the geometry and reading the plans.
Okay. Makes sense. Joe, I assume you need some time to look at this,
Yeah, I'd
but I
like
don't
a
know if you
little
have
bit
any.
of time. Through the chair, I guess one question that comes to mind. the one basin is obviously too small to hold the required volume. The other basin is large enough. Were calculations done on the regulatory rainfall event to determine if there's a sufficient enough drainage basin?
So we didn't run the calculations because the volume doesn't, but this area here by defunct, we were like, it's so big, there's no way it wouldn't qualify, basically. And then this area here, even regardless of the watershed, it still discharges. It
Right,
can't
so
contain it.
that one is, that
So,
one,
yeah,
yeah,
so
that one is too small,
yeah,
that's
so
clear.
this one here is, I mean, we're being conservative at calling it elevation 402. Because if you look at the elevations in this area here, you have elevations just below 402 right in here, which again, as you may remember, Joe, this area is a very pit and mound. There's shrubs are on rises. There's depressions in the middle, and you might find elevations that are 401.5
Sure,
that
sure,
snake
yeah,
out.
yeah.
So we said, you know what? It's definitely big enough. We know it's going to hold enough water. We could spend lots of money crunching data
That was the
to
question
just
is-
prove the fact that it is still ILSF, or we can just say, you know, we know it's going to be ILSF. We'll call it ILSF to be conservative. The commission won't object to us calling an area jurisdictional if we think it is potentially jurisdictional. And then we call it out based on the elevations of the spill out point, which would be 402.
Yeah, my question is, I mean, it's big enough by your calculations. It's just whether or not it holds that volume of water.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of that, we didn't run the calculations to determine that.
Yeah.
But we do know by area and by field observations, this area definitely would fill
Okay.
for that.
Yeah.
So if I ran the same calculations here as here, we'd definitely go over 10,890
Right.
cubic feet of volume. So, and it's because it's a very large area, and we know this is the high point. We know it gets deeper down here. So the elevation from here to here may be, I think, maybe up to 2 to 3 feet. Versus here, it's very shallow. We have, I think it's about 18 inches is some of the deepest spots,
Deepest.
if that.
So you'd
Yeah,
have the depth, you'd meet the depth
yeah.
requirement also.
Yeah, the depth requirements were definitely here in terms of the average 6 inches of depth, but it was the volume also they were
Right.
looking at, and so that was the issue there. But yeah, good question.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions at this point. Yep.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Does anyone else on the board have any questions about this
I don't.
exercise? No?
I don't.
All right, I think we're just going to give Joe some time.
Absolutely,
look at it
and
then.
if the commission does have a question that does come up, feel free to send that to Judy, and she can get that to us, so that way we can make sure that we get you anything else. But I hope you'll find everything in order.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience have any questions on this? Okay,
So we'd request a continuance to April 29th, please.
okay. Can I get a motion to that effect?
Happy to make that motion.
A second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Hopkinton Trails Club for your exemption request of vegetation clearing. Good evening.
Hi, Chair. My name is Chuck Daughtry. I'm a member of the Trails Club, also a director on the Hopkins Area Land Trust. The proposal we have relates to what I guess is called the Kaloa property that the town recently acquired, abutting the Hughes Farm Conservation Area to the north. Running through this property, actually originated at Hayden Road, but now running from what was the old railroad right-of-way that parallels Hayden Road west is what is being termed a, quote, cow run. It's an old path lined by stone walls for much of the way that theoretically was used to run cattle out to pasture and avoid the crop fields along it. The area is densely overgrown with mostly invasives, bittersweet, multiflora rose, barberry, and we've done a little rough clearing just so you could even get in there to see what was there. I did visit the site with Judy and Ann recently. We have begun, this is a cooperative effort with the Trails Club, the Trails Committee, HALT, the Hopkins Area Land Trust, and I trust open space, although I'm not sure, Ed, if the commission is officially on board. I can't attest that the commission is officially on board. I can attest to everything that Chuck has said so far about the state of the trail, because I spent about 3 hours there Saturday
Right.
morning and came home needing a Band-Aid because one of those fine barberries managed to get me through my pants, and my dear wife then had to soak my pants, and I don't know what to get the blood stain out of
You
it.
can't soak your own pants?
That's what I was thinking.
I would have, left it there, as a badge of honor, but our hope, as was indicated on the map that was up there, is that this will be part of a trail that will eventually use the right-of-way, although there's an informal trail that neighbors have already created on the west side of the Charles River wetland, that connects out to the Cow Run and then crosses on out to Teresa Road. But we do then hope from the west end of the red line that you see there to then loop back and connect to the Hughes Farm Trail. It'll make a very nice walking loop. But first we need to get things cleared. We've been working on some of the upland areas, clearing them, and what we would like is a determination of exemption from the commission to proceed with clearing of the wetland crossings. These wetland crossings are old fill, basically mostly large stones, smaller stones, and then earth fill over them. There is a sort of a stone culvert. The outlet end is at the near side of the boulder that you see. You can see there's concentrated flow coming through there. This is on the crossing, the earth and stone fill crossing at the western section, the longer crossing. It's well over 100 feet long. But it effectively is an old roadbed that we want to clear out enough that it can become a hiking trail.
So this will be, 4 feet wide, is that kind of what you're thinking?
We're trying to get, at least a, 5 to 6 foot cleared swath. The fill area here is probably 8 plus or minus. It's not exactly uniform, but
Yeah.
that's, but it will, we'll be able to, once we can clear at least a footpath where we won't have the multiflora roses reaching out and grabbing somebody, I think, that'll be what we're looking for.
You sound like you're denigrating the work that I did out there. I mean, I came back and pronounced it was walkable from end to end, just don't do it in bare feet.
Right. Yes, our project on Saturday was
Ed was working on this end of it. We were more in the middle.
Just stays as.
Now that once you cut down the thorns, then you still got to deal with the roots. So we've been uprooting the remnants so that there won't be toe catchers and won't resprout so quick.
Yeah, yep. No, that makes sense. This is just vegetation clearing of brush and invasives, no trees.
Yes,
That's
there
pretty
are a
typical.
few logs that
Yep.
have fallen in and a couple of small trees that within the way, but most of it is stuff that's fallen in. And so we'll be cutting those logs out.
Off the trail, yeah. Okay.
Done by hand, we're not,
It's-
no heavy machinery is going back there or
No.
anything. Right.
And, chainsaw.
Right.
And power shears, but that.
Right.
Yeah.
Ed, do you have anything to add from your,
You want to see my scar?
No, no.
just about the trail? Just about the trail.
Only if it relates to the question.
You and LBJ.
I forgot all about that. No, I mean, it was a nice turnout from the Trails group. A lot got done. I was sort of like the lead and taking out all the stuff that was hanging out to tear people's eyeballs out and stuff like that, and these guys were coming along, pulling up the stumps. And I think it's gonna be lovely when it's done.
All right.
Great.
No, this is a great property. I like walking around here, so it
We
looks
saw,
like a good project.
we saw egg masses.
Yeah.
Old tires.
You know it's a wetland.
Ran the gamut.
The old tires are gonna take a boat hook to pull out,
Okay.
or a wade, one of the.
Town doesn't buy any property unless it has old tires on it.
All right, then, can I get it, or does anyone else have any thoughts from the audience, questions, concerns? Good. All right, can I get a motion to approve this as an exemption request?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
no problem.
Thank you,
Good
Chuck.
luck.
And since it is walkable now, you're invited to come out and take a look.
Take a look,
As
yeah.
long as those thorns are gone. My wife isn't gonna take the blood out of my pants.
You gotta wear your leather chaps. You gotta wear your leather chaps.
My snake-safe boots.
Kevlar.
Hey, you know, speaking about boots, I've been thinking it's time to cowboy up. I'm gonna start wearing my cowboy boots and gain back like inches that I lost.
It's about time.
All right, next up, we have 22 Kruger Road, informal discussion on project changes. Did you get anything in on this, Judy? We
Yeah,
did,
We have
okay.
Zach here.
Kruger hat from Australia.
Hello.
Hi.
So, we had talked last week through the little,
Yeah.
about removal of the berm, but I really didn't have a solid plan in place to new plantings, natives, things like that. So that's kind of what I put together for you guys for tonight. And Judy, and emailed over to you guys, so you should be, got a small plan here. One is a breakdown of the details, and the other is the site plan, where I just kind of pinpointed where we were approximately gonna be planning, making new plantings, things like that. And I can run through it quickly.
Yeah, sure, if you wanna.
So there were 7 trees in the berm,
Yeah.
one 12-inch oak, 3 8-inch oak, 2 6-inch oak, and 1 5-inch oak. We're proposing removal of the berm and installation of a stone wall that runs the property line up the front. And we're gonna be reusing the fill on site. And then our planning plan for the yard after removal is, we're proposing 5 high bush blueberry shrubs, 3 river birch, 2 hamamelis shrubs, 1 northern red oak tree, and 1 swamp azalea shrub.
Okay.
You got your own
Did you have a
somewhere,
chance to take a look at this on the planting choices?
Yep,
Yep.
so I did provide some feedback on another iteration of the plan to get some non-natives and cultivars taken out. So everything being presented has been on our approved list of native plants. The only thing I recommended was some of the plant species might do better in wet inundated conditions, so, I don't know what the soils and the site looks like.
Yeah. It's hard to say. It's like gravelly, but, I don't know, it's moist. It's not dry soil, but it's hard to say this time of year, either,
Yeah, I mean, everything that's being presented is native, and if things need to be shifted out based on how moist the soils are, that's something that Anna and I can approve.
Okay. Okay. All right. I like the idea of a stone wall and there. That'll be nice. I think this makes sense. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the proposal here? I think we have, so 3, 4, so we have 7 being removed, and then we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. 12 being replaced.
It's not quite 2 to 1.
It's not quite 2.
Through the chair, 2 of the tree removals, we believe, were included in the original order.
Okay.
Yeah, I have, there's 6 red oaks going back in per the order of conditions. 1 azalea, 1 rhododendron, and 2 dogwoods.
Okay. So it does make the,
Okay.
okay.
The 7 oak trees, what species?
I was going with northern red oak.
No, I mean, the ones that are being taken out.
That was, I don't recall offhand, they were on the original. Or you mean from the berm here?
Yeah.
I believe they're white, I'm not sure.
There's a big difference between white oak and red oak.
Yeah.
White.
And if they're white oak, I would suggest that planting a white oak would be more useful than a red oak.
They're
Okay.
red.
All right, fair enough.
Anything else? Okay. I can't remember if we're voting on this as a,
So, last meeting, the commission voted to approve the geothermal wells and the replacement of the retaining walls as minor project changes.
right, okay.
So you have the option to approve these as minor project changes, or you always have the option to request amended.
Right. Okay. I guess I will ask then for a motion to approve the berm removal and tree removal with replacement, including the oak tree, proposed oak tree to match what was,
Yep. I'll
Taken
update-
out.
I can update this and email it over either
Okay.
when I get back or first thing tomorrow.
as a, modification.
You're looking for a motion?
I'm looking for a motion, yeah, and signatures. Yep.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Yes,
So this is the property we saw a few years ago with the boardwalk that goes out?
yes, to
Right,
the,
okay.
yeah, State Park.
That's what I thought. Same.
And we were, that's pretty much on, not within the property line, I think. It was
I don't
off
think it was even
property.
on the property, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, go ahead, sorry.
I'll make that motion.
So this motion is including what is noted as a red oak being a white oak?
Yes, with that change is my understanding.
Yes.
I'll second. Did you make the motion?
I think I did.
You did.
I feel like I did.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, you're all set.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
All right, next up we have, DCR Hopkinton State Park violation discussion for tree
Buckle up.
clearing. Come on up. Hello.
Hi.
Nicole Kelleher, I'm the Forest Health Director with DCR.
Okay.
Richard Tribbiano, I'm the complex coordinator for the Hopkinton Complex, DCR.
Welcome. All right, Judy, do you want to give a little summary of what's going on?
Sure, through the
Yep.
chair. So back when DCR had requested several stretches of guardrail in Hopkinton State Park, be replaced as a exemption from the commission, Anna and I had gone out to the park just to take a look at the guardrails, make sure everything looked okay, and we saw at the time several trees throughout the park marked with red stripes. This was back in late March, so we asked the applicants if they could explain why the trees were marked. We hadn't heard anything about removals. Heard back last week that the trees were slated for removal due to public safety concerns. And as we know that at least in the stretch of road right past the kind of guard station at the front, we know there's wetlands there. I had just said removals here are subject to the Wetlands Protection Act, and require commission approval to proceed with removals. And the following day, the trees were removed, without that approval being sought. We did receive a plan showing the general locations and approximate number of trees being removed from the park, but didn't receive any documentation proving that they were public safety concerns, or hazardous trees, as we would expect when we're issuing exemptions for hazardous tree removals, which is a fairly common request. So we went out there earlier this week and counted roughly 26 trees removed from the area that we know is buffer zone, as well as a significant amount of wood chips spread within the buffer zone as well. There may be more trees in the park subject to additional jurisdiction. This is just the area that we know to be wetlands based on, conversations that we've had with DCR in the past. So I think commission to sort of discuss next steps, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Judy.
May I quickly ask for a photo clarification? Judy, the photo in the upper right and the lower left, are those the same wood chip spreadings, just two different photos, or are those two different locations?
Yes, that is the same location, but a different angle. So
Okay.
if you're looking at the guardrails from the road, culvert in the middle that drains out to wetlands downslope, and there were wood chips on either side, but none in the channel itself.
Okay.
I guess I'll open it up to you all on, what your intentions were, or what you had going on here.
I mean, this was a hazard tree removal project along roadways throughout the park. So it was trees that, I will say also, equipment never left the road. Trees were only reached out, grabbed without any disturbance to soil, adjacent vegetation. Like, if you look at some of the pictures, like, there'll be a sapling a foot in front of these trees that are removed that isn't damaged. So this is pretty standard project, fairly small scale, was done by a contractor through our competitive bid process just due to the nature and scale, and since it was specialized equipment used, not done in-house by our teams. Typically, DCR does not pursue conservation approval for hazard tree projects. It's a kind of a precedent and interpretation that this is regular maintenance and considered minor actions outlined in the Wetland Protection Act. We also, there's precedent that town-level bylaws relative to tree removals in Chapter 87, and that is not applicable to state agencies, so it's usually why we don't go through town-level approvals before completing projects like this.
I think based on my experience, I'd agree. Usually it's what's jurisdictional under the state is what we're upholding when it comes to DCR, projects. I know in the past we've had, like over at Whitehall, DCR come when they've had to take trees down, to the commission, even if they were, dead or diseased. So I think this caught us off guard, as far as something that would automatically be assumed to be okay, or something that we wouldn't need to look at, especially when, our staff had mentioned it from being on site. What is how you determine a safety hazard tree?
There's a wide variety of metrics, so sometimes it's things like some of the trees were already dead. Some had defects, splitting, cankers, significant dead branching. A lot of the trees in this project were smaller birch that are growing at an angle that is kind of unsustainable, and during the winter months were reaching a point where they would hit vehicles that are going in. They were low enough, and pruning for those was not an option because pruning back to a safe level would then make the tree itself a further hazard and likely to fail. So that was most of the scope in this project. So mostly smaller size birch, a handful of very large decayed and dying white pine, and a handful of oaks that had significant limb dieback or defects to them.
The thing that I think is just important to our commission, we do, typically if we have any other applicant in town, or any other property owner in town who's gonna take down trees for safety issues or because they're dead or diseased, then they provide, that type of documentation, so we don't have people just deciding on their own that this tree is a safety issue. And, obviously, in looking at it, and I have walked the park, since then, it is selective. There's not, I agree, it's not like you're clearing areas of trees in any way. It is, specific trees that you are taking out, but, we do want to be conscious that we're treating all of our property owners and applicants,
I'm
equally.
curious what your process for like DOT is within the town bounds.
So DOT, I think for the town, we have a open order or an open agreement with our DPW to maintain trees, correct?
Yeah, we work with DPW. We visit every hazardous tree that they request. And I would just point out that state agencies are subject to state laws. So even though the bylaw might not apply, we're talking specifically about the buffer zone protected by the Wetlands Protection Act, and that is what the commission is here to enforce.
Yeah, so to make it easier for groups like the town, or like DOT, I don't know if have we had DOT in here?
We've had DOT
Okay,
projects.
yeah,
Change, Mass Pike interchange.
Mass Pike Interchange, yeah. Well, absolutely for their construction project, but just as far as tree maintenance goes, we'll have agreements with them where we, say this is the expectation, and then, like Judy said, before they go out and, have a contractor go out and do work, they'll go and walk and look at the trees, when they're marked or whatever, and agree or give any feedback on what they might see from our perspective, because, you're worried about safety in trees, we're worried about, protecting resource areas, so it's kind of two different glasses that we're looking through. Things like putting wood chips in resource areas, we don't necessarily want to cause trouble with putting a bunch of wood chips either in resource areas, and then, covering over habitat and doing damage that way either. So it's I think it's a partnership, but ultimately the goal is the same. Obviously, you care about the park and are doing the best you can for that park resource, but we just want to make sure we're on the same page and doing our job to hold up the state Wetland Protection Act as well. So I think our typically, if it's not a dead or diseased tree, and someone comes in and wants to take it down, we require replacement or replanting of a shrub or a tree. If there's an issue because it's dead or diseased, things like that, from an arborist determination, then that's a different story. So those are the things that we look for when groups are coming in to take down trees on their properties.
Melissa, I have a question.
Yep.
So, so this is an annual or not, or just a sort of periodic thing that you do?
As needed. We do at least a minimum once a year arborist assessment of our parks, but projects like this are only on an as-needed basis.
All right, so what would we expect them, do we expect them to submit something every time they're gonna do cutting like this? And what would that be, an exemption request?
I think if it's so what we follow with our DPW, I think they just work primarily with you, right, Judy?
For small projects, so we'll go out if there's 2 or 3 in the right of way. For something like this, when I got this plan showing it was in the hundreds, I would think that would be appropriate to come to the commission.
With a exemption, yeah.
Follow-up, in Whitehall, what, have we seen something from Whitehall where they've cut things? I mean, have they come before us?
We've worked with
DCR.
DCR in Whitehall to remove hazardous trees.
But nothing has ever been like this, right? Most of the trees I see at Whitehall have fallen on their own, right, across the trails.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had anything this scale at Whitehall. It's just been a few trees.
I think you
Here or
said
there.
recently that Whitehall was 3 trees that DCR came to talk about. Is that right?
Those were, I will say, those were under a different group in different circumstances and not part of our regular arboricultural maintenance projects.
Or were they part of a public road zone where vehicles and people are walking regularly?
Yeah, you get a lot of traffic through Hopkinton State Park for sure.
So in the future, we want a heads up when there's,
Yeah, I think in the future, if you have an effort like this going on, then a heads up, kind of like the guardrails.
Through the chair, one of the things that I hate as being the grand poobah of open space is when someone calls me, open spaces parcels in Hopkinton, separate from you guys, and people call me up and say, hey, what's going on? I go, I don't have a clue. And so this is the same sort of thing. So someone going through the park and they see this stuff happening, and who do they call? Call conservation, or they call town hall and say, hey, what the heck is going on? And, you know, people are left feeling kind of like not knowing the answer. So it's like, just, let people know what you're doing.
who calls?
Is there a plan for more tree cutting with the guardrail work? Or are you guys done with tree cutting?
These were 2 totally unrelated projects.
Oh,
They are not related at all.
I kind of assumed it was since you were doing one, we saw these trees.
Nope, completely unrelated projects. They just happened to be,
Yeah.
Okay,
we were just pushing through to get done before.
okay, I misunderstood that part.
Yeah, I do want to say in the Wetland Protection Act, it does talk about roadway tree removals and being kind of exempt from permitting processes, which is why we typically move forward with this type of work. We have over 450,000 acres across the state. My team has 3 arborists that does all of that work, so I don't want you to feel like I'm not telling you because I don't want to tell you. I am not telling you because I'm trying to maintain safety across a huge amount of area for the public of our entire Commonwealth.
Through the chair, my only other comment would be, with really large trees, if you could just pollard them and leave the basic trunk there, so it becomes a resource for critters that are gonna come along and eat it, and then in turn be eaten.
Yeah, but then hardwoods become a problem.
We do when we can, but with these roadside trees, even a significant, like usually want to leave a stump like that at least over 8 to 10 feet. And a lot of times it's still a striking hazard at that point, which is why we don't.
It also kind of grows unruly too, and, right, sprout,
They
shoots
can,
and stuff that come up.
unless they're dead.
Sometimes it depends.
I guess, and hopefully I'm correct in this. So I haven't looked at the Wetlands Protection Act to see if, and I'm not a lawyer, to see if I would agree with your interpretation or not. But I would think certainly getting our input, whether you need our input to clear a tree or not, is different from us protecting what the state says we're supposed to protect. So with the dumping of wood chips and with the way the stumps are left or not left, I would think that the state expects us to have input on that as part of protection for the resource area. I don't know if we should or should not, because I haven't read the act with this in mind, whether we should or should not have input on the trees. But it seems to me it's our job to protect what's around the trees as well. And so I think a discussion makes sense for that purpose.
I do also want to bring up in the future if there are tree issues outside of wetlands and buffers, that those do not fall under this group. So, I mean, there may be times where we are removing trees that are not under this purview.
Correct, yeah. Our jurisdiction is the wetland and the 100 feet side of the wetland, so. But clearly, clearly there are plenty of trees that, were in.
I mean, the wood chip thing is, to me, I'm no wetland scientist, and I know I'm changing the nature of the earth if I dump a bunch of wood chips on top of the wetlands. And part of me would like for you to clean them up, but I fear that would do more damage to the stuff that's underneath it. So I don't know. In my mind, the tree cutting is a question, but it's also how it was done, how it was left after the tree cutting. That's a question. And I'd really appreciate for the resource areas that the Commonwealth asks us to watch out for, that we have discussions about it.
So what's the question?
So the question, I think, for us at this point in time is, I think it is in, without reading the act, whether or not we do anything further in this violation discussion or issue any official violations if we feel that's necessary or not. Or if we, have this discussion and come to an understanding and feel comfortable that we can have a relationship going forward that,
Right,
we
so-
can avoid the situation in the future.
So I'll give you my opinion, which is that, I don't think at this point, anything else should be done. But it would be good to get a heads up in the future, and have us, allow us to take a look at it, and see if there's any impact. And I don't know if these wood chips are piles or dump loads or just what was cut when the tree was cut, but I would think at this point, there's not really much to I would wanna do. I don't think replacement is.
Yeah, replacement in a forested area is kind of, it's all forest, so. The small saplings will obviously grow, especially with the bigger ones cut down, but,
As an aside, you guys seem to do an amazing job of getting rid of the understory there, as compared to, say, Whitehall, right? Which is a good thing in my opinion, because most of the understory is invasive.
This isn't the Whitehall team.
No, I understand that.
No, I mean, the understory's not us.
Yeah, no, I know.
Oh,
It's the deer.
no, I think just from observation, the wood chips were the trees that were taken down,
Yeah, it's the chips from the saw,
spread in that area.
from the saw cutting.
From
They
the
didn't have a chipper there.
It looked like a chipper, yeah.
They're,
No, it
they're
was,
spread, under the 3-inch minimum.
yeah, I was gonna say, it looked like a few inches of wood chips in that area.
Well, it's organic. It does some denitrification, that's important. Good for bacteria, they like it, wood chips.
Any other thoughts on this? On the board?
I'm comfortable saying we've had a chat, and hopefully the next time we have a chat before trees are cut, and calling it at that. So I guess in that way, I'm with Jim.
We need some kind of motion, do we need this is a
No,
discussion,
we don't need any vote or motion or
No,
anything.
it's just a
It's
discussion, right?
discussion. It's just a discussion. We have a lot of tree cutting issues in Hopkinton.
Private, right.
70-something trees on private property after they were told to stop.
And
Oh, I was
developers,
gonna
yeah.
ask them.
In a wetland?
Buffer zone,
Arguably, yeah, in a
but
buffer
close,
zone.
very close. So,
And the buffer zone is 100 feet, not 150 in this town?
correct.
But we regulate the WPA 100-foot buffer zone with our bylaw. It's a resource area from our bylaw standpoint.
And 200-foot riverfront,
Yeah.
which the clearing that they're talking about is within 200 feet of Whitehall.
So we have certain regulations for 25 feet out from the resource, 50 and 100, which is not WPA.
And I've never called to say there's a hazardous tree hanging over the trail that goes down from our house.
You watch out for it every time you go under it, don't you?
Yeah, but I don't hang around under it.
And you don't go there in windstorms either.
Can you imagine what your wife would have to clean up with that happen?
That was good, Ted.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming in
Thank
and
you.
talking to us. Appreciate it.
Richard,
Go
good
Bombers.
to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, you remember the piece of property I came looking in your drawers for boundaries and things?
Yeah,
Still don't have that squared away.
can't find it? I can't find it. I'll never find it.
So
Have a
that's
good
what-
night.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we have the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Action Grant Letter of Support. So before this meeting, the town submitted an application
You sure?
and asked for a letter of support from the commission, and since we weren't meeting, I went ahead and worked with Judy
This is the
Um,
one.
to draft the letter, or Judy drafted the letter really, or
Well, mostly
Tweaked
the
it.
project team. I tweaked
the
it.
project team did, Judy tweaked it, I gave my 2 cents, just to show support for the project, but my understanding is that, the application is to look at 2 locations in town. One would be the Windsor, property, and then the other one in Legacy Place, and to work with, the people that live there for an education and outreach, component, and then to come up with some sort of green infrastructure, rain garden, BMP, something like that in the area. Big, education effort seemed to be a big part of it. And, they would have a group and Judy would be part of that group to reach out to community members and work on the grant. So yeah, just I guess an FYI that we
Thank you.
sent that in. I think that's the only other thing I just wanted to give as a heads up to the group is I have been working with Judy and Anna and the vice chairs kind of to go through the ticketing process. We did sit with town council. We figured outside of a public meeting is the best to vet those thoughts on ticketing approach. So we've been looking at that, kind of trying to come up with some guidelines, and if anybody has questions, you can reach out to Judy on that, or me, but we are forging ahead with the ticketing process and how that gets implemented, based on, you know, what's been coming in front of us lately to carry that out, so. One of these days soon, I'm sure we'll write our first ticket. Is it ticket have like number one? Is it numbered number one?
It's a fresh pack.
Fresh pack, yes. So we'll see who gets number one. Bound to happen.
I don't think I have any property that's jurisdictional. I might do something just to get the number one ticket. Frame it.
Frame it on the wall.
I'll give you some.
I was gonna say, you go to Jim's house.
Yeah.
We'll spread some wood
I'll give you
chips.
some. You can have some jurisdictional property.
Yeah, I get some in my house too. You can easy
I'll
access.
donate something to you. No, my house is not in jurisdiction. What are you talking about?
My yard's about the size of this table, so.
It's about the size of what's not jurisdictional.
All right, do we have anything else on?
Hearing notices.
Just need to open.
Oh, thank you.
The 2 new ones, please.
However, I will do.
Oh, open the new hearings.
Now I lost them. There we go. They went to the bottom. All right, the Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 8th, 2025 at 7 p.m. at the Hopkinton Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street, to hear all persons interested in a request for determination of applicability filed by Bayan Lane Incorporated for the raising of a single-family house and associated site work. Location 4 Linden Street, Assessor's Map U13, Block 23, Lot 0. Can I get a motion to continue this out to the 29th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 8th, 2025 at 7 p.m. at the Hopkinton Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street, to hear all persons interested in a notice of intent filed by Michael and Kathleen Culler to construct an addition with associated site work. Location 17 Ledgestone Drive, Assessor's Map R26, Block 157, Lot 0. Can I get a motion to continue this to the April 29th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, then with that, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved. Reluctant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's do this again.
Really?
All right.
And we should plan ahead, maybe.
Time to clean up. Haven't done this in a while.